Oh, thank you, Frank. Again, thank you to Luis, to Nancy, to everybody at the center. It's a privilege to be among with all the panelists and all of you who I know you've sat through plenty of presentations and several hours, so I will be very brief and straight and to the point. I do not want to repeat what my fellow colleagues have said. I think you've heard plenty of evidence, but I'm going to make a case as to why Venezuela should be on the state-sponsored terror list, and in addition to that, why Cuba should never have been taken off. And this is very specific. This is not just theoretical. I'm not going to give you a class on theory or what terrorism could be or does do. I'm going to give you a specific case as to what Venezuela has been involved in over the last several years that presents a credible and very imminent threat to our U.S. national security. Now, most legitimate governments in the world, one of their most critical functions is immigration security in particular. We trust on our officials to keep us protected from foreign threats from abroad. In today's day and age, Islamic terrorism is one of those biggest threats that we constantly hear it all the time in the news about the potential that they can penetrate our borders or our territory, violate our sovereignty, and launch an attack against the United States. This has happened in the past. We all remember September 11th. Certain countries use immigration as a tool, as a method to be able to launch attacks against their adversaries. One of the most infamous in these categories is the Islamic Republic of Iran, who uses terrorism as its first line of national defense. It offers them two clear advantages, as they're not a conventional force, much like the United States or other Western powers. It offers the ability to have plausible deniability, to deny that they actually have attacked an adversary, but was still initiating that attack. And it also offers them the ability to put political pressure on allies and adversaries and create an environment in which Iran could pretend to be the more legitimate actor in a specific scenario. So Hezbollah is Iran's most known terrorist entity, terrorist proxy that has been used to create attacks all over the world, including in the Western Hemisphere. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the 1994 attack against the AMIA Culture Center in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Before September 11th, that attack in Argentina, where 85 people died, and then 2 years before that, the Israeli embassy in the same city, Buenos Aires, where additional 24 died, that was the largest Islamic terrorist attack in the Western Hemisphere. That was the Western Hemisphere. That was Latin America's 9/11, before our 9/11 woke us up to the threat of Islamic terrorism. So there you have Iran that has used terrorism historically, empirically, as a method of its national defense. Then you have Cuba, who until recently was on the state-sponsored terror list, not particularly because of its support for Islamic terrorism. It was initially for its support of Latin American revolutionary groups that had a robust terrorist actions in different countries, in Peru and Colombia and Chile and others throughout the 70s and into the 80s in Latin America. More recently, they were known to have tied to the revolutionary armed forces in Colombia, as well as the ETA group in Spain. Now, some regional analysts will tell you, well, those two groups aren't as active as they once were, but Cuba has also used its abilities, its technical abilities, to be able to enhance the immigration system of like-minded countries in the region to present another threat, dealing more with Islamic terrorism. Enter Venezuela. And we've all heard what happened with the revolution, the Bolivarian revolution of Hugo Chavez. One of the things you have to understand is the Bolivarian Revolution was a series of missions that were created by Hugo Chavez to essentially change the infrastructure and the political landscape of his country. One of the most important missions in the Bolivarian Revolution under Hugo Chavez was a mission called Mission Identity. Mission Identity was a mission to have every Venezuelan national be registered under one central database that's controlled by one central authority. The purpose of it, obviously, was, when I say it's one of the most important missions, was because if you want to get the free health care, if you want to get the benefits of the social missions, you have to be registered. You have to have a national ID card, and the government has to know who you are and what you're doing. So it's a way to, the Cubans already have perfected this ability in Cuba because they essentially replicated their model and brought it over to Venezuela. When Hugo Chavez wanted to figure out how to do this in 2005, which is a key turning point where he took his national revolution and took it internationally, or at least regionally, creating the ALBA Alliance. When he took it regionally, he turned to one of his trusted colleagues in Cuba, the infamous Comandante Ramiro Valdez, and said, hey, listen, we need to learn how to do what you did in Cuba. We need to do it here in Venezuela. And this company was already mentioned, I think, by Adriana, Albert Engineering Systems, which is a Cuban state-owned company that belongs to the University of Information Sciences, sent engineers, one engineer in particular, Jose Lavandero Garcia, who is a systems engineer, who essentially designed the retransformation. And they have proposals. I've seen these proposals, 300-page proposals of how to use biometric data and how to take registries and systematize them so that everything's work automatically, no longer, human data entry. And what was once called the ONADEX, the Venezuelan immigration system, transformed into SIME by 2009. So this is about a 5-year project that it took. The Cubans were in charge of the technological side. The Venezuelans took in charge of the political side. One of the individuals that was in charge of the political side of this operation, meaning getting the political buy-in by other politicians, by other ministries, and basically getting a whole of government support behind this mission identity, was a gentleman named Hugo Cabezas. Hugo Cabezas' right-hand man was someone that Emily Blasco has mentioned, Tarek El-Assami. It's very important that everybody here understand exactly who Tarek El-Assami is. Tarek El-Assami is not just your everyday revolutionary. He's not just your one in a dozen Chavistas. He is one of when you talk about the crime-terror nexus in Latin America, it's him. He is the crime-terror nexus. He's originally of Lebanese parents that was born in Syria, has close familial ties to Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah. From back in the day, Ghazi Nasruddin, who Emily Blasco mentioned, was his right-hand man and his associate in the Middle East who would advise Nasrallah and Hezbollah as to who, how, and when certain operatives would come, while El-Assami created a parallel financial network that extends over 40 different front companies, 36 bank accounts in about 6 different countries, including the United States, and is the person of interest under investigation by U.S. authorities. And from what I understand, his investigation is much larger than Diosdado Cabello's. Tarek El-Assami created this infrastructure as a pipeline. Sebastian Rotella from ProPublica, the investigative news agency, reported a year ago that Iran and Venezuela and Cuba have created an intelligence pipeline, an immigration pipeline that spreads from the Middle East, sending funds and drugs from Latin America to the Middle East and sending Islamic terrorists into the Western Hemisphere. He was absolutely correct. That pipeline exists. It's an infrastructure that has been built. It's operative. I think Emily mentioned about 300, list about 300. I've seen a list of 173 names with passports, national ID cards. This list is in the hands of our authorities. These are all individuals that are either from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, or Jordan, so the most likely countries that Hezbollah would operate in. These individuals got one of 3 different services. They got visas. Visas usually facilitate the ability to open bank accounts in Latin America, or they've gotten passports, which allow them to have freedom of travel and movement, or they've gotten national ID cards, and in very limited cases, they even got birth certificates, which makes them a ghost. That means we do not know who they are anymore, and that means our authorities nor regional intelligence officials can track these individuals. This is 173. I imagine that is a drop in the bucket. And if you are using your infrastructure, your state infrastructure, your abilities to, as a legitimate state functions to support some of the most nefarious actors, and I'm not just talking about people that are attacking the Venezuela citizens, that's egregious enough. These are people that are attacking, these are the same people that are attacking Christians in the Middle East. They're attacking the Jews in the Middle East. They're attacking Americans and U.S. forces abroad. And I'm a former Marine. I have served in Iraq, and I have dealt with these individuals on a personal level. If that function doesn't qualify, if using your immigration function does not qualify as a state sponsorship of terrorism, then I don't know what does. And Venezuela has completely used their immigration services to the benefit of these groups with the help and support of Cuba. And in intelligence, I used to be an intelligence officer. And in intelligence, they have a saying, it's called intelligence preparation of the battlefield, IPB. It's an operation that you use sometimes for several years, sometimes for decades, where you prepare a battlefield so that you can have greater operational capacity in the future. Intelligence drives operations. Well, the first step in order to prepare a battlefield is you have to have operatives. And the way that Iran, Hezbollah, Syria has been getting their operatives into Latin America has been through Venezuela. And that's, I think, the information I have. I wrote a report on this. It's called Canada on Guard because it was more to do with Canada. It's available on our website, securefreesociety.org, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it offline.
Terrific. Joseph.